precipitation modification, etc. So this is sort of a roadmap where you want to go. Another one says here, which is quite important, that the chemical, it says chem and adv, and read chemicals and aerospace delivery vehicles, which are now not at the baseline, but are already somewhere. And we now live 2010, so they are up to 30-40% maybe, will be increased over the coming years. So they actually acknowledge that these things are already going on. Okay, human activity influences the Earth climate. We can agree on that. We still don't know exactly how. The ClimateGate, Inconvenient Truth, Al Gore, there's a lot of criticism. And of course Al Gore is in the meantime a billionaire in cap and trade. Well, we know that climate has become big business. The report states that it is logical to assume that our quality of life is in great danger and immediate action is necessary to safeguard the planet. I'll leave that to the report. The report mentions an array, certain kinds of means to counteract global warming. For example, by iron fertilization, the throwing out of iron particles over the oceans. That means that there is going to be more plankton getting CO2 out of the sky. Chemical buffering. Both of these we are not going to discuss, but we are going to discuss geoengineering. And then we come to patent 503186 of the Hughes Aircraft Company, which has 18 claims. One of them is seeding aluminium oxide in the stratosphere, or thorium oxide. Refractory Welshback material, which is also refractory materials consisting of several chemicals. Particle size is mentioned, and the disperse between 7 to 13 kilometers. So this is in the patent. Well, Hughes Aircraft Company, who got this patent in the first place, is now owned by Raytheon again. And this is, you can just find it on the internet, it's fascinating stuff. It says that spraying method, although not firmly specified, described in the background of the invention, stating that one technique proposed to seed the metallic particles was to add the tiny particles to the fuel of jet airlines, so that the tiny particles would be emitted from the jet engine while the airline was at its cruising altitude. So it just plainly states that this is the way to do it. Okay, coming back to Mitchell and Finnegan then, in the report from 2009. And the paper is called Modification of Cirrus Clouds to Reduce Global Warming. They state that the seeding material comprised of a pressed composite of reagent bismuth metal, aluminium and gilsonite. I don't know what it is. Natural hydrocarbon. Could be either dissolved or suspended in the jet fuel of commercial airliners and later burned with the fuel to create seeding aerosol. This method is applicable to civil aviation. Any civil aircraft can be installed with this kind of material and nobody would know or have to know it. They go on stating that alternatively the mix could be directly injected into the hot engine exhaust. So that's after the fuel is burned, which should vaporize the seeding material, allowing it to condense as aerosol in the jet contrail. So, all patented. It looks like this. The engines from the older engines from AWACS aircraft and the KC-135, which is a tanker aircraft, they already have spraying pods, and they are described in another patent. And the patent is here describing that contrail generation apparatus for powder contrails for maximum radiation scattering ability, 85% metallic particles. And these particles and these contrails should sustain for periods up to 1 to 2 weeks, which is quite an extensive life. So, the logical conclusion from the previous knowledge is, states the report, that cirrus clouds have significant influence on temperature and precipitation. Combined with strategic plans and scientific studies, it is a matter of time before climate modification using cirrus will be used for peaceful or military purposes, if it is not already ongoing. Are you still with me? This is real science, guys. This is boring. Okay. If temperatures would rise 2 to 3 degrees centigrade, some scientists predict massive weather problems. This is stated in the report. Recently, 5 economists, Nobel laureates, just before Copenhagen, proclaimed that climate engineering is the most cheap and rapid response. So we're not going to look at the cause of the problem. No, we're going to fix it by climate engineering. And they have an old table with ratings for several ways of doing this. And they rate that stratospheric aerosol insertion is a very good. That's science, scientists saying that. So, in May 2010, this report claims that climate control programs controlled by military but approved by governments are silently implemented in order to avoid the worst case scenario of the climate change. 2 basic instruments we have: temperature control through artificial clouding and manipulation of the ionosphere through ionospheric heaters. They anticipate that around the world there is lots of cooperation going on, of which the general public does not know. Just a few more slides before I go to the conclusions and the recommendations. The same guys in October 2009, so that's just half a year ago, state that with the delivery process already existing, this geoengineering approach may be less expensive than other proposed approaches. It implies that the method for widespread spraying of metal particles through commercial and military aviation is already in place, and may even have been in place for a long time. Approval of the patent suggests that extensive testing has already been done, for example, by the US aircraft company. Combined with possible secret order issues in the name of national security, certain patents may even be confiscated by US government, thus the public would not have knowledge of it. But not of all. For Europe, and now we're coming to the legal aspects of climate modeling. For Europe, clouds, man-made clouds using metallic particles created in one country and drifting into another country may violate laws. And the example from Germany was one of them. Yet if one does not know that this is happening, there is no problem, of course. Yeah. In Russia and China, spraying is legal. They do it all the time if they deem it necessary. In the United States, spraying is legal according to public law. There is public law that just states we are allowed to spray on our populace. In the United States, you have the Space Preservation Act proposal of 2001. The first one was rejected in April 2002 after some unfavorable executive comments from the Department of Defense. In the unrevised proposal, there were statements on a ban on exotic space weapons. For example, a ban on ultra-low frequency weapons, a ban on environmental and climate weapons, and a ban specifically stating chemtrails. The only existing official document mentioning the phenomenon of chemtrails was this Preservation Act. But then they altered it and the word chemtrail was removed. You can also find these documents on the internet. I cannot say if they're genuine. I didn't go into the depth of the legislative library in the United States, for example, but many websites are stating these documents. Here you can find at the bottom somewhere the word chemtrails. What about safety then? Safety and health aspects. For health and environmental issues, the present report only refers to the literature with regard to aerotoxic syndrome, which is a syndrome that flight crews experience above average from normal people when they are exposed longer times in the cabin from bleed air. That is the air that is coming into the cabin to refresh the air, which is drawn from the engines from the cold part of the engines, but they have contaminations with hydraulic fluids, engine oils, and maybe some fuel gases. So these crews are usually more sick from these kinds of gases. Military aircraft. The report is quite frank on their views about military aircraft. I already mentioned that, because a military aircraft, especially when there's a war going on, and there are several, they contribute substantially to flight movements throughout the world. Many military aircraft fly under less strict conditions, so they are bypassing laws that are applicable to civil aviation, so they can pollute much more than a normal KLM or other aircraft. They therefore contribute